In this lecture, we're going to dive into programming theory. More precisely, we're going to talk about what PHP is doing when we write code. To kick this discussion off, I think we should take the time to define PHP. That's going to make sure we're all on the same page. Here's the best definition of PHP available. PHP is an open-source, general-purpose scripting language for developing web applications. Whoa, what does all that mean? Let's slowly unpack that definition to fully grasp PHP. First and foremost, open-source software, OSS for short, refers to code that has been freely released to the public. Anyone can study, modify, and redistribute the software. Collaborators from all over the world have voluntarily contributed their time to improving PHP. It's one of the largest open-source software projects in the world. You may be curious, does this mean that you can download the original code for PHP and modify it? The answer is yes, you can. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the official PHP GitHub account. On this page, you're going to find various links related to the PHP project. Everything is available to the public free of charge. If you don't like where PHP is heading, you're more than welcome to modify the language to your heart's content. However, most people are happy with PHP, so that probably won't be necessary. Regardless, it's still good to know where PHP is discussed and maintained. Moving forward, let's keep dissecting the definition of PHP. I mentioned that PHP is a general-purpose language. A general-purpose language is a programming language that can be utilized to develop different kinds of programs. Originally, PHP was introduced as a language for developing web applications. As time passed, developers discovered it could be used for other things. It's possible to develop command-line scripts, desktop applications, image processing libraries, and so much more. Programming languages are considered to be general purpose when they can be used to solve a wide array of problems. For all intents and purposes, this course primarily focuses on web development with PHP. Other areas of software development aren't explored. You're more likely to be hired as a PHP web developer than a PHP desktop application developer. Lastly, PHP is considered to be a scripting language because it's interpreted. Technically, it's not wrong to call it a programming language. After all scripting languages are programming languages, but the reverse isn't true. Not all programming languages are scripting languages. That leads us to the question, what does it mean when a programming language is interpreted? If you've ever watched a movie or TV show about computers, you may have seen something like this. What you're being shown is called binary code or machine code. Binary code is the only language that computers can understand. As you can imagine, reading binary code is not the most ideal situation to find yourself in. For this reason, programming languages were introduced to improve readability. On the other hand, a new problem arises from using programming languages. Since computers can't understand programming languages, code must be transformed into machine code. This is where a program called a compiler comes into play. The job of a compiler is to transform our code into machine code. After our code has been transformed, the instructions written from our program can be executed by a machine. This concept is not exclusive to PHP. Other programming languages share this feature, whether it's Python, C++, or Rust. So, what does this have to do with an interpreter? There are two main approaches to generating machine code. You can use either a compiler or an interpreter. A compiler and an interpreter are tools used to translate computer code into a form that a computer can execute. The main difference between the two is how they do it. A compiler translates the entire code of a program into machine code in one go and saves it as an executable file. This file can then be run as many times as needed without recompiling it. An interpreter, on the other hand, executes the code line by line, translating each line of code into machine code and then executing it immediately. It does not generate an executable file. Here's another way of thinking about it. A compiler is like a translator who translates a book into another language and then gives you the translated book to read. An interpreter is like a translator who translates a sentence and then reads it to you immediately. So, you may be wondering, Is PHP compiled or interpreted? PHP is interpreted. Programming languages that are interpreted are considered to be scripting languages. Therefore, PHP is a scripting language. With that being said, there are debates about which approach is better. Should programmers use compiled languages or interpreted languages? Those discussions are beyond the scope of this course. All you need to know is that PHP is interpreted. By installing PHP, we have access to the PHP interpreter for transforming our code into machine code. The next step in our journey is to start using the PHP interpreter. In the next lecture, let's start writing our first PHP script to run it through the PHP interpreter.